for all those fans of the HDC. Okay, this is the May 22nd, 2025 edition of the Historic District Commission. This is a call to order. We have an agenda in front of us, which is followed, the call to order is followed with a roll call. Richard Yunkin.
Here.
David Hill.
Here.
Sharon Henderson.
Here.
And I'm Murray Gates, all present and accounted for. The next item is the approval of the minutes for April 30th of 2025. Give you folks just a second to digest and...
Yeah, I will just note that I forgot to put in the start time in the first paragraph, so I will check the recording and put in the appropriate time when I finalize it.
I'll move that we approve the minutes of the, which meeting was it?
April
The
30th.
April meeting.
Okay, we have a first or a second. In a second, any conversation, discussion? I'll note that item 3, correspondence and public comment, it states members question whether the 4/8/2225 letter was ever sent to the council. Just amending that to say that there was a request to confirm whether or not that was actually the case or not. Any other comments or suggestions? Omissions, errors? Okay. We've got a first and a second on the motion. I'm going to head to see who all is in favor. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. The minutes are approved. Correspondence and public comment.
I do not have any for the board.
Okay, old business, item number 1, preservation awards. I think we can, I think we do have one open item, open question on that one.
Yeah, let me just check my email. I did reach out to Old North Road, and I have not received a reply. So just double checking on that. So I will resend the email right now and just say we're looking.
Well, I think we might want to consider the time frame of the 24 award and perhaps make a motion to forego 24 and pick it up again in 25 for the 25 award. And the seminary in Old North, I would think would still be a candidate, a prospect for the award.
Any discussion on that? Did you want to make a motion, David, or do you just want to leave it as that, at that?
Well, again, the time period for the award, I think, ended in January, as I recall, and here we are in May, looking at June. So I think we're just a little bit late, and again, if we forego the award consideration or process for 2024 and pick it up again in 2025, I think that would be a good way to go. So I'll make a motion that we do that we not consider the 2024 award and consider candidates for 2025.
Okay, we've got a motion.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion as David had stated?
I do have a discussion point, and that would be, I know we're following up in 2025. Is it the same set of, do we do a new ask for nominations, or do we proceed as we have been proceeding to look at projects that we think have merit and to zero in on them as a board?
Well, I think if we do something, again, we'll have to do it a little bit differently to get different results, right? Our outreach would have to consider different channels, I guess, to see if we can elicit more feedback, or some feedback.
Yeah, I think it was advertised in the Independent, I believe, and that garnered no nominations for the award. But I don't see why we can't do a public query again.
So I would be in favor of a public query. We would just continue in the same process that we've had for 24. We're just continuing it to 25 and having a 25 be our year for the award.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, that brings us to the to new business, the Matunic Historic Resource Survey. Discussion and action to receive and approve final survey.
So I'd like to make a motion to receive and approve the final survey with one condition, and that is that we change the title of it. And let me give you the reason why. And that is because the title is Matunic Historic Survey. And Matunic is a far greater place, far bigger place than the beach zone that we have as our project scope. So what I'd like to do is change the name to Matunic Beach Historic Survey and have that as a condition of approval, and that Brent actually look at the document carefully throughout, but particularly in the first 9 pages, I believe, where he would have to change his references to the survey when he talks about it and make sure that it's clear that it just covers the beach area. And I've already sent to him the revisions that would be required so that he can look at those and it'll be easy for him to update it.
We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I have further discussion.
Okay, I think procedurally we just need somebody to second it. Does anybody want to?
I second.
We have a second
I
from
second.
Sharon. Okay, now open for discussion. Sorry.
Yeah, minor changes. It's a outstanding report. Bravo Zulu, well done to Brent. And are we going to bring it up at all? Did you plan on?
I certainly can.
I wonder if Brent is listening in or watching the stream.
While you're doing that, I'd just like to add that as part of the discussion, that there are recommendations in there that are really important for all of us to digest and to look at. They're carefully done, and I think they require perhaps a group discussion, another meeting. Maybe we can't do it tonight, but another meeting where we would really come to grips with those recommendations and think about them and discuss them.
Yeah, I would concur with Rich. One of my comments would be that the recommendations are sound, they're good, but they don't identify who would take them for action. So I think that that is something that we could do, is figure out those recommendations and specifically who might be the best entity or organization or whatever to take it for action.
Yeah, I agree with David completely
So,
on
so
that.
we can have certainly conversation on this, but just to put the motion behind this, is there anything relative to the motion that we want to discuss? And then, again, we can follow up with some more conversation. If not, then why don't we go ahead and open it up for a vote? All in favor of approving the final Matunic Beach Historic Resource Survey as conditioned by Mr. Youngkin?
Aye.
Just for clarification, if I have some minor edits or changes, would that,
I think this is the right time. This is the discussion period, yes.
okay.
Yeah, sorry, we hadn't gotten there then.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Aye.
Well, we should
We should tackle
talk
those,
about
right?
the edits before we have a final vote on the motion.
Right, that is appropriate, as per Robert Rules of Order, to talk about before the finalization of the survey, of the vote, through the vote. So if you'd like to talk about those edits, are they fairly minutia, or are they big things?
They are, very, very minor. The charts and graphs that are in the report, I think they should be numbered for clarity and for reference purposes. There is one chart that has the sea level rise predictions, and that is not generated here by Carol, I don't believe, and I think it would be appropriate to identify the source on that particular chart. And and thank you, Brian, for sending me the link again. I don't know what I did with it this morning, but I took another look and I said, I am a homeowner, a property owner in Matunic within the risk area. What is this telling me? And there's a good deal of interpolation by the homeowner, and I thought of ways that it might be simpler to say, I live at this property, and this property, roughly in this year, I will be affected by the combination of sea level rise and a 100-year storm and flooding primarily. But I think that interpretation should be, to some extent, general. The graph that shows the sea level rise as compared to 100-year storms, it could have been clear that a 100-year storm is no longer a 100-year storm anymore. A 100-year storm has turned into a 50 or even less storm. The event of a 100-year storm is much less than 100 years, in other words, and that was not clear to me.
David, what you're saying is that a 100-year storm doesn't happen every 100 years. It happens far more often than 100 years.
It does now due to climate change.
Right. That's the big difference. We call it a 100-year storm, but it's actually happening much more frequently.
Yeah.
That magnitude of a storm.
And that was my point, that somewhere it should be, if I'm a property owner and I say, well, gee, a 100-year storm,
That's not going to happen to me.
odds are pretty good.
Yeah,
That's not the case.
yeah, right.
And then on the chart, which has the sea level rise and compares it to the 100-year storms, I think that we could put, or Brent could put, next to the sea level rise, the predicted year or time frame that sea level rise in Matunic will happen. In other words, sea level rise 2 feet in 2075, something like that. So the property owner, make it easy for the property owner to say, okay, I'm in the risk area again. I'm here. I see that in 2075, I'm going to have, along with a storm, a 100-year storm, a sea level rise of 2 feet, and I will be affected in 2025. Right. So it's a matter of just interpolation. And again, I agree with the the recommendations, they're good, but let's identify who should or could be responsible for taking action.
It's possible in that discussion of who should take responsibility that we could assign that person the responsibility of the clarification, the actual detailed clarification for a property owner who might be interested in knowing that, or the town actually, or whoever is chosen, it might be a nonprofit, to take the lead, that they reach out to the property owners and actually tell them, this is what we find in this report that you should be aware of. So you're actually taking even the responsibility of figuring out what's in the report by the property owner, putting that into a professional's hands to say, property owner, this is what you should be aware of, and this is what this report is saying.
Concur.
Yeah.
That sounds really good, Rich. Thank you. And finally, I'm not clear on the final step here in terms of public availability of the report, how it is going to get and presented to the public.
Right.
I think we've probably talked about that. I just don't.
Well, we
remember.
were going to talk about a date for that.
Yeah, sorry, this isn't
We're
part
going
of
to
the...
talk about that after we
Yeah.
vote on this.
That's right.
We've got a motion on the table here, and we just have to discern of the few comments that you had, David, which of them are you saying should be done prior to this report being finalized? Do we want to approve it as final now, and everything that you said could be done afterwards? Or is there anything that you want to see done to this report by Brent as a deliverable before we sign off on it?
I would like to say that I'd like to see it polished a little bit more. As an academic, that's my nature, but I'm not going to. I'll just let my comments stand, and if someone wants to polish it a little bit more down the road, that's fine, but I think we can go ahead and approve it.
Just to point out, Brent's put a lot of work into this. We paid him the first half on the completion of the field work. I need a vote to approve and accept this in order to release the second half of his payment on this. Everything that you have commented on, David, I think is completely legitimate. I have, numbering the charts and the graphs. I think that should be done, and typically there should be a table in the table of contents that outlines all of those exhibits as well. ID data sources in the tables and charts, again, good practice, and adding the sea level rise dates. So those are the three things I got from your comment, and I have no problem talking to Brent to make those adjustments as a requirement of your approval.
Well, and you also have the title change.
I have the title change as well, yes.
And you'll find I'll send you those specific comments I made, but they're typos and things like that I pointed out to Brent.
Always good to have another set of eyes.
And Brian, you're saying that given those items, we can go ahead and approve the report.
It would be a conditional approval, so it's approval conditioned on making those adjustments.
That sounds good.
Okay, so I think we're really close to having a final vote on this with all of the recommended updates.
So let me amend my motion to include all of David's recommendations and edits, so that the complete list that Brian has will be in the motions list.
Okay, any other discussion or recommendations?
Other than a big thank you to Brent for
Yeah,
his
certainly.
outstanding work, and also to Carol for her involvement and work in this project.
Okay, all approved, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, our next order, further conversation. Now that we've voted on the report, did you want to discuss some next steps and a little bit more elaboration on what Richard alluded to with having responsible parties take the ball from here.
Yeah, I think the major thing, if we can talk about it now, Brian, is the schedule, how to schedule that public. We don't have any other item on our agenda that goes there, so
So I've already been in contact with the Land Trust. They are more, in fact, I had a date scheduled at one point. They are more than welcome, more than glad to host again. So it's just an issue of picking a date, making sure Brent has that date available as well, and making sure that the Land Trust facilities are available on that date. So if you guys want to talk amongst yourselves and give me a couple of dates to work with, I'll be happy to set it up.
okay, so I'm working on Brent for a date for, this has to do with the Hale House and the exhibit there. Just to talk about the survey very generally and not about the outcomes of it in terms of flood, and for July. So if he could, that'd be probably before the mid-July. So if he could do something later in July, that's the big public event, or in August, early August, that would work. I think that's the time when you get a lot of people there in Matunic who would be interested, a lot of property owners and summer people who are part of that, who own or are involved in those properties that are at harm's way.
Anybody else that we're expecting to participate, either as a specialist or a subject matter expert? At one point, well, several times over the course of our conversations around the survey, Rich, you've brought up about the importance of having a building inspector present, because it's very practical in terms of what these homeowners can do in terms of making modifications. It's really, there's a lot of responsibility that's on the building inspector.
Right, it has to do with Brent's recommendations about a historic building that's recognized either as a National Register property or eligible for the register or on a local list of historic buildings, being able to get some relief from the building code, but that process is done through the building official. So I think at the last meeting, we were wondering whether the building official had that kind of knowledge or not, and whether or not that could be shared when Brent presents, so that if a property owner is there, some very specific information can be given to the property owner. But if we know that Brent talks about it and he's very clear about it in his recommendation section about what that is. So this would be simply reviewing that section with the building official and getting some response, and then seeing if that official might come to the meeting. And maybe the building official already has prior knowledge of all of this and has a system to deal with it. I think that's what we discussed before. And it would be invaluable, I think, to have that person be with Brent at the meeting.
Particularly if he's in lockstep and in agreement with their role in one of these cases. It certainly is required to have a conversation prior to the forum. Otherwise,
Yeah.
having the building inspector come and say, no, we don't do that, or
Right.
we would never consider that.
Right.
That would be a little bit messy.
Yeah. So that should all, perhaps occur fairly quickly now that we've got Brent's report almost wrapped up. At least that section, can be shared even in its current form. I mean, it's very close. It's just, so I don't know how Brian wants to proceed with that. If that's something that we can, that David and I can do with the building official, or how to proceed.
Any thoughts?
Let me bring it up with Jamie Gorman, the building official. It shouldn't be a problem for him to have a telephone conversation with Brent. It certainly doesn't warrant Brent coming to South Kingstown to meet with him face to face. But let me talk to him and get a feel for what he knows or doesn't know about these issues. And at that point, maybe it would be a good start for you, Richard, or somebody else on the commission to chat with Jamie Gorman, and then have Jamie Gorman talk to Brent and see what we can do.
I'd certainly be willing to do that
Okay.
if you want to set it up. I can share with Jamie my experiences in Westerly and elsewhere with their building officials and the waiver process.
And then the other area that I didn't know what your thoughts were is around a climate change expert, somebody that's maybe, I would think, at the university that would have insights on trends and impacts to coastal regions. Is that complicating the topic too much, or would it be good to have somebody complement Brent's presentation with, the reinforcement of the science behind what can happen if that conversation comes up?
The person at URI and Oceanography School is Brian Oakley, who has been studying the erosion situation along the coast. And he would likely be the one who could explain to people what is exactly happening in scientific terms or in lay terms.
Yeah, I think also in the Marine Affairs Department, the department chair, Austin Becker, who is the resilience expert, I'm sure he would welcome the opportunity to attend.
So would it be giving them a 15-minute spot, a 10-minute to 15-minute spot to actually do an overview on impacts and trends and things that would be of interest to the Matunic community?
Yeah, I think I go with what David has suggested, really, because of the marine affairs connection and the fact that it interplays with local government and policy making. So that's a very good thought, David. And Brian's is much more technical about, what is happening. I think the whole human interaction with this is probably what people would want to know about.
Yeah, there's within Marine Affairs, there's several folks who might be interested. Professor Rick Burrows, who was an oceanographer, and also teaches coastal governance. I know he would be interested in. And he has studied Matunic in his graduate classes for years. So, several people.
So in terms of timing, I would recommend that the key people would be, because we know what's happening, would be Brent's report on his findings and recommendations, the building official about what individuals can do, and then another person, just one other person, who could talk about the situation. And whether you have the report and the building official talking first, or this other person from Marine Affairs talking first, I think that we could discuss that more. But I think 3 people would be enough and not too many.
How about other coastal communities in the area?
Well, I have to say this, that South Kingstown is a little bit behind some of the other ones, but they're all in the same boat. Westerly, of course, had a lot of experience because of Sandy and what happened at Mesquamacut Beach. But in terms of the waiver situation, they're a little bit further ahead, but only with a few projects. Newport has had some experience with the waiver, and I think some other coastal communities have as well. It may be that we would find another building official who could share his experience or her experience with the waiver situation. We could look at that, but I think if you get any more people, you've got too many talking heads, basically.
A symposium.
Yeah, you're headed in that direction.
Okay, any other conversation as it relates to the Matunic project? Matunic Beach project? Okay,
So I'm still looking for a time frame. I got some very general suggestions from Richard, but I didn't hear any consensus from everybody else on what works for you.
I've got no limitations one way or the other.
No, I don't either. I'll go along with the group.
So it could be, I would say after mid-July to, I would say mid-August. I wouldn't go any further out than mid-August.
Okay, that's what I'll look at.
Okay, we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the discussion of stone wall protections. So as a reminder how this ended up on our agenda, I had met with the planning board and talked about the activities of the Historic District Commission, and the only thing that was specifically brought up by anybody on the planning board was Maria Mack's suggestion that we look at the action item within our list of action items from the comprehensive plan that references protections for stone walls. So with that, you should have in your packet just some very preliminary information that I was able to come up with from both the state of Rhode Island as well as 3 communities, Smithfield, Portsmouth, and Lincoln, each of which have some level of protections and consequences for, in some cases, consequences for unauthorized alterations of stone walls. And although I don't know that we're going to have tonight a motion for a proposed zoning ordinance change, but we can talk a little bit about what a proposed ordinance change might look like if we decide to go in that direction.
Murray, could you refresh me? Are we talking about stone walls within the historic district?
So that certainly could, we could restrict it, although I think they're already protected through landscape features. However, I think the conversation in this case would be more townwide stone walls.
I think it depends, David, on how the board envisions doing this. If you envision doing this yourself, you certainly have the authority as the HDC to set rules within the historic district. However, you would also have the option of drafting a townwide ordinance for consideration by the town council. You would not be able to implement it yourself, but you could make a recommendation to the council.
And I think we'd probably work with the planning board on this as well.
Just let me describe what we already have for our standards and guidelines for within the district. Historic landscape features such as, but not limited to, stone walls, picket fences, gates and posts, paving, terraces, arbors, pergolas, pavilions, specimen trees, hedges, and other appurtenances should be retained, repaired, and preserved whenever possible. So if we had a stone wall relocation going on, that's a historic design feature by its nature, usually if it's a ancient stone wall, then we would have review over it and decide what should be done with it on a case-by-case basis. And use our standards to help guide us. So removing and not repairing or changing or destroying or losing any of these features is not recommended within the historic district. And we would deny maybe an application to do so. But it's usually done on a case-by-case basis, an evaluation of what exactly is in front of us in terms of one of those features, a stone wall, a specimen tree.
I think I'm hung up on the notion that we should not be involved in regulatory matters outside of the historic district. But Brian is saying that we can make a recommendation
Yeah,
for
what you
town.
would be recommending is an addition to the zoning ordinance. It would automatically, by nature of the approval process, you would make a recommendation to the council would send it to the planning board would, they have an advisory role in the process, and then it would come to the council for a final decision. So you're not exercising any regulatory function. You're exercising an advisory function to the council, and the nature of the board is advisory to the council.
And the proposed ordinance change could involve the HDC being involved. There are instances of that, but doesn't have to be. Smithfield has the HDC being a part of an approval process. The other communities do not. Based upon where we think this town stands in terms of the HDC's role in regulatory matters, I would think that we probably would not be involved. There's also a distinction in some cases between having a building inspector be the approval authority. And in other cases, there's instances of having the planning board be the approval authority, particularly when there's a application for a subdivision development, for example. There's also an interesting instance in Lincoln where they're offering tax exemptions for maintaining stone walls. So that's a little bit on the other side, the carrot as opposed to the stick.
Yeah, I would be in favor of moving ahead and drafting whatever we need to draft and move it forward for. Yes,
So
ma'am.
Murray has provided a number of examples. I would start with examples, find things that you're interested in incorporating into your own. Don't be afraid of stealing. We do it all the time in the regulatory world. And, come up with an outline for what it is that you guys want to do, take a look at it, try and identify stumbling blocks in it, and get something that you feel comfortable presenting to the council.
What is historic stone wall preservation?
What is historic stone wall preservation? Are you asking for a definition of what a historic stone wall is?
Preservation. First of all, it's to me it's almost a. It's not concrete what you're saying.
Certainly that's what the ordinance would be doing is identifying, and in some of these instances you've got actual definitions of what a historic stone wall is, right?
And then what is stone wall preservation? And then who does it? And is this an ordinance or not?
Well, preservation I'd say is ensuring that the historic resource is there to be enjoyed for future generations.
And who identifies a historic?
How do you
stone
determine
wall?
whether or not it's historic?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to know. I'm
That's a
new.
great question.
And sometimes you guys talk like I just don't know what a historic wall is.
It's a great question that's open for discussion. Like I said, there are some communities that describe stone walls as being from prior to the 19th century. There's even some ordinances that say if it's got moss on it, that's an indicator of a historic stone wall. So there are certain characteristics of stone walls that different communities have used to define a historic stone wall.
So we would have to start with that.
We would beg, borrow, and steal from other ordinances and then customize it for ourselves to make sure that it aligns with
How
what
we
our
get
vision.
it, you know, that's one thing, but that's a definite, we need to have we have to have a definition of a historic wall.
Great.
I think, Sharon, if you look at the Portsmouth example, which is your Portsmouth stone wall ordinance, they describe what a stone wall is, and then they talk about their regulations and standards about treatment of the stone wall. And I think if you're concerned that a fallen down stone wall may have to be rebuilt under this ordinance, they specifically say that it could be left as is. In other words, there wouldn't be some sort of enforcement to rebuild stone walls that are already.
Well, that's not what I'm asking. How do
Falling
I
down.
know this is a historic stone wall?
Well, there are references that describe historic walls, stone walls that were built in Rhode Island in the 18th and 19th centuries. There are no indigenous native stone walls that I know of, although there's some discussion about that going on. There are Narragansett-built stone walls that are later, that could be even 20th century stone walls, early 20th century stone walls, or 19th century stone walls. But the historical record is that a lot of our stone walls were built actually after the Revolution, and there are some that may have been built by enslaved labor. So there's another coefficient in here about the human interaction in building the walls themselves. And then there are definitions of different types of walls. Portsmouth has a lot of stone walls where they're flat stones that are laid up. We have a lot of round field stone walls. And there are also standards about how you remake one of these walls. The Land Trust has been, the South Kingstown Land Trust has been maintaining their extensive stone walls in Matunic, and have now come to, they have a maintenance schedule for them and a way to deal with them so that they can keep rebuilding them and maintaining them. The round stone walls made of round stones or semi-round stones, field stones, tend to be dry laid without any mortar, and if they're thick, in other words, the wall isn't thick enough, they tend to fall over. There are different types of field walls. Some are narrow and some are thick. Some are double walls because they were made, I think, to enclose animals rather than just to find fields. There's a lot of study done by how they were made in the first place, why there are certain spaces, sort of definitions of fields as a result of the stone walls, and the proximity of the stone to make the walls. It's very complicated, but that information exists, and it can be translated into an ordinance. It just depends upon how defined one wants it to be.
Yeah, I might go as far as saying that any stone and every stone wall within South Kingstown is a historic feature of the town. I could be wrong, but I don't think anyone is building stone walls anymore.
There are a lot that have been built.
I built 100 feet of stone wall very close to where you live.
Yeah.
It probably isn't of the quality of the Narragansett Indian tribe, however.
Their walls are very special because the stone is chosen, you look at them, and they have designs in them, and rather than just the field stone wall. There are, however, walls that have been made for landscaping, for terraces, and terrace walls, and landscape feature walls that exist that are 20th century, mid-20th century, and all through the town, in various places of the town. So you have various layers of walls. You have the ones that define fields, you have the ones that define gardens, or garden features, or parts of gardens and garden features. You have a whole range of them, actually.
So we're going to have to include these definitions or these
Yeah.
in our, and then like I have a stone wall built in 17 by the Stantons, but I don't think you call that historic stone wall
Why not?
because it was built in 2017.
Oh, 2017.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's also not a dry stone wall. Not that that has to be the definition, but I think all
There's
historic.
no mortar in it.
Oh, there is.
Well, my stone wall has moss on it, so.
There is a standard too in our guidelines about platting lots, and that lots ought to be platted in such a way that stone walls are not in the middle of a lot, they're on the edge of a lot. They're used as boundary lines, again, or parts of boundary lines. So that is something that could be looked at in terms of the existing subdivision regulations, land development regulations, that the planning board does. It's under their purview. It's not under the council's purview. It's planning board's regulations. And whether those could be spiffed up, or if they exist, or if they need to be changed or edited or what. But it would, it should be that the planning board, is, when they're looking at plats and subdivisions and land developments, that they are intentionally taking care of the stone walls. That's probably what Maria was talking about when she spoke to you, that they either don't have them or want them or would like us to make them for, like us to put together something for them.
Right. I don't know if it's our GIS system, Brian, you may know, but some GIS systems, you're able to see the stone walls. They're demarcated on one of the layers. So inventorying of stone walls is, I don't know if it's something that any of the communities in Rhode Island do, but that's also an activity that some communities do as a means of preserving them.
Yeah, that would likely require field work to get coordinates for the walls. Might be a good Eagle Scout project or something like that, but I don't think it's the kind of thing that the town is going to dedicate staff resources to.
It could also be a geospatial exercise in tandem with a field exercise.
You may be able to get it out of some geospatial data, but I mean, tree cover and ground cover is going to block a lot of it. A lot of it's going to require field work to do with any degree of accuracy. I can say from the planning perspective, we do regularly, in looking at plans, encourage people to subdivide or build with the walls in place and use some thought in doing that, not just punch roads through and ignore the walls. And we also generally require that in the event that you do have to destroy walls, that all of the rocks, say if you have to punch a road through a wall, any of those stones that you remove, they have to remain on site and either be used to construct new walls that conform to your subdivision layout, or to repair the existing walls that are there, because inevitably a lot of those walls are missing stones or have fallen down or whatever. So we do try. There is not a lot of strong legal mandate to impose that on somebody. We get to do that when a developer comes through with a plan that needs some sort of relief or waiver. Then we get a lever to require those extra kinds of things. But for somebody who comes through with a 100% compliant development plan, we don't have a whole lot of leverage to mandate that. If there was an ordinance that the planning board could stand on, that would certainly help. Or in addition to the subdivision regulations, as Richard mentioned.
How would you take a survey? I mean, how valuable would a survey be? Not how would you take it. How valuable would a survey be?
In terms of setting out an ordinance or rules or regulations, I don't think it would, it's not, certainly not a critical element. It would have value for planning purposes, but in terms of exercising some sort of regulatory or legal control through an ordinance, it's not necessary.
What would it require, let's say I knew there was a historic stone wall and I wanted to document that. What would you be looking for in that documentation?
Well, like I said, the easiest way to do it would be to get GPS coordinates with a handheld GPS device. And if at some point, if we have enough data, we could load it into the town GIS system as a mapping layer. But, you know, we would need to have a fair amount of data before that would become worthwhile.
Well, the only thing I was thinking, there's a lot of small groups around doing cemetery work. And every one of those cemeteries have stone walls around them. And you do go in and you could GPS pretty easily. Do you do the corners, or how do you do it? How do you do for a cemetery?
I don't know, I'd have to talk to
Okay,
Carol.
okay, because that would be interesting. And I'll talk about that later.
So anything other than, Sharon, you had a very good recommendation, ensuring that whatever ordinance is proposed, that it has a definition to it. Is there any other elements that are, in your minds, required for this ordinance? Okay, so I guess it's just a matter of somebody coming up with the best aspects of the ordinances that are available to us and putting it together in a proposed ordinance. Any volunteers? Okay, I guess I'm going to continue to own that one. I'll see if I can put something together prior to the next meeting. Any other comments as it relates to stone walls? Okay, we're going on to the next item, which is discussion regarding potential coordination with the Affordable Housing Committee. I think this was a recommendation that might have come out of last month's meeting.
Yeah, I reached out to Peter Swain, who's on the Affordable Housing Committee, and we spoke about getting together this next week to talk about, well, for us to share information about historic preservation and affordable housing and where the two can come together and be mutually beneficial. So I can report back at our next meeting and what the result of that. He's enthusiastic about working with the HDC.
Perfect, great. Okay, any comments?
Should we go to their meeting? Should we be encouraged to attend their meetings, or?
I think actually it would be, if you have the time, it might be valuable to do so.
They typically meet right after your meeting, so it's just a matter of staying a little longer. They are not meeting tonight, however, so.
I don't think I could.
Okay, that brings us to staff update and planning department activities.
I was telling Richard, he had given me some suggestions for updates to the subdivision regulations. I completed inputting those into the running draft that we have because we do plan on getting an update to the subdivision regulations out this year. They're getting kind of old in the tooth, and the last couple of years of legislative changes really haven't been fully integrated. So we're just working to accumulate all the changes, and we'll try and get something done after the legislative session ends sometime next month. We'll start incorporating things. There has been some talk of just taking our current set of regulations and burning them in the wastebasket and starting over again, which that's a legitimate way to go. I mean, you can only amend things so many times before they become so convoluted that they don't read very well anymore. So we'll see what happens, but we're definitely moving forward with that. Other than that, no other updates.
Recurring discussion topics. I don't see any new discussion issues and future agenda items.
I don't know if this is recurring, but I brought this packet to talk about. It's got a little bit of the, this is a 250, but it's got, I'm sorry. It's got the 250, but it's got some very exciting things, and we talked about, a little bit about this the last time, and would you call that reoccurring or new business?
Well, it wasn't listed as a recurring item. Brian, do you have any objections to us?
Well, I mean, typically, I put the recurring items on there. If you want me to add discussion of the 250th to the recurring list, I will do that. But we can do a brief discussion under new discussion issues. This is really intended to be brief on something that somebody is looking to put on future agendas for more detailed discussion. So
I'll wait till I get there.
I think we're there.
Oh, okay. So I put this packet together to show this one item, and we touched on it a little bit last time, and I found out talking to the town clerk and that if we are going to put up a monument that has to be documented, the names have to be documented well. So I'm in correspondence with Richard A. Geek, and he's working with me, and he gave me a list of all the Patriots of Color that have been located from South Kingstown, and he actually put the resources with them, so this is resourced. So if we move forward with this, we have got the documentation. And then after that, I put his professional background, his bio. You can take a look at that at another time, and then behind that, the places and the books he used to get his research, okay? So that's pretty good. So the next one is what's interested, I think, to this council is, or this commission, is this is the monument that sits, and I took the survey information from the National Register for Peacedale, and it describes where this is and what this is and when it was built and who built it. And so that sits there, and there's no way to add names to it. That's just, it's a bronze, it can't be done. So the next step was to put another monument up. And so the monument company in Westerly I'm working with came up with sort of an idea to kind of give it the same flavor. And this eagle that you see on the top is actually sitting in the yard, and this is Westerly granite, and there'll be more detail. But this is very expensive. And so I was telling one of the representatives about it, and they said, put a grant in now, I think we can get this. So if I can get the quote in, and before I can get a quote, I have to go before the town council. So I'm going before the town council this next Tuesday, and I'm going to ask for permission to seek a grant for this, okay? What's good about it is I went to the State House for a function, and 2 or 3 people came up to me and found out we were doing this, us, and that they had suggested that there were more grants available. And so they sent me these grants and said, you would definitely qualify, because everybody thinks this is really exciting. And it's called the Rhode Island Historical Preservation Heritage Commission grant, and the Rhode Island Council for the Humanities grant, the State Council Facilities grant, and the American Battlefield Protection Program National Service grant. So I've got 5 possible grants to get this money, okay?
Just one question for clarification. I think for Brian, if you're looking to put this on hazard school property, does the school committee have to be involved in it, or is it the town council?
Probably the answer is yes. probably to both, but it is a school department property.
I think the town, I don't think the school, I don't know, the town, I sent the request in through the town manager.
All right, well, let me, while you're talking, let me look something up.
Okay. Anyway, so, yeah, that'll be great. Okay. So we'll find out the details on that, okay? And then the next thing is, to give you some more background, this is really good right here. This article, which when I printed out, it didn't come out very well, so I actually typed it up. And this tells about who they really were, how much of the revolutionary soldiers were not just the first battalion, but the rest, they were infiltrated with the French. And it's kind of like a true story. It'd be something you'd like to read. And so my question to you is, if we get the permission, would you all, somebody on the staff, that's why I asked, say where it would go that would be appropriate? You know, where would you put this on if we get the permission to put another monument up from the school board or from the town council, would you all help to sit it? So they tried to make it kind of look so it's, you know, I don't know as much as you do about preservation, but you all try to get things to look so they're appropriate. They fit in with the scheme, that they don't stand out. So would you all look at where that would go? And this wouldn't happen until April of 2026. However, I have to get permissions, and that's going to take the time and get the money.
So let's, because this is, I think, a very interesting proposal that you have, can we add this as an agenda item to our
Yes.
next meeting?
Yes.
It's great stuff, Sharon. Thank you for putting
And
it
it's
together.
okay. I just want to kind of get it in there.
Can we ask any questions, or is that, Mr. Chairman, can we ask questions?
Sure.
So this is a question for Sharon. You showed a picture of the existing monument at the Hazard School. So this one is it's a World War I Veterans Memorial Flagstaff, and what names are on that? Just World War I names?
No, the ones it was put up for the World War I veterans. 260 are on there, 5 dead. Then they went ahead and it's a huge monument, so they put all of the Revolutionary War. 106 are on there.
Okay, that's on another
1812.
another bronze
As you
plaque?
go around, it's on this monument. As you go around, each plaque has different ones. And it's really interesting to go over there and look at it. And then 1812 is on there, and the Civil War is on there.
Well, the thing that I'm looking at is the picture of it, which you all have in your packet.
Yeah, that's the one I put in there.
Do you see the blank space on the
It can't be put in.
can't be put there?
They've already assessed that.
And why is that?
It's the way it's the cement it's in. It's cracking. They've had it restored once, and it can't be put on there.
They can't withstand any
No.
more bronze. Interesting.
And we had a conservator come from Boston.
So, and the one that, oh, well, that's very good. Thank you for doing that. Wow. So the one that you're talking about from Westerly, is it a round or is it more oval in shape? It looks
No,
like
it
it's
is a
more
round.
oval.
They tried to copy this. It's a cylinder of granite that's going to be cut exactly like this. And they will put, if it needs to be higher, they'll put 2 of those bases like that on it. They're trying to kind of get the same feel. And these eagles are Gorham eagles from Providence. And they don't have Gorham, so they just happen to have an eagle. And I said, this is really neat. And then the saying you see that's on there is described in here. It says who said it, when, where, and that's also on the painting that you saw, this painting right here.
Well, so is the eagle a stone eagle or is it a bronze?
It's a stone eagle.
Stone, okay.
If we start going bronze and silver, we're talking, like, this is a very expensive piece, this little one. We're talking a lot of money.
Yeah, let's put this on the agenda, because
Yes.
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
a really good,
Thank you.
great project.
Thank you.
Any other agenda items for our next meeting?
I'll defer to Brian on this one, but perhaps an update on the 138 tip and the implications for the historic district.
Sure, I can look into that. I don't have any more real information than I think we've discussed in the past. I've been involved in some discussions about it. It's probably, they're looking at like 2026, I think. I know that the bridge replacement at the railroad right-of-way is being pushed out until 2026. But that'll be a mess, so keep your eyes out for
Where is
that.
that?
The bridge over the Amtrak rail line in West Kingston.
Oh, okay,
That bridge has to be replaced.
okay.
But, you know, again, as we've discussed, it's mainly just grind and cut pavement and make repairs to sidewalks. We have been advocating to extend some of the sidewalks, particularly on the URI side of 138, because you have a real mishmash of concrete and asphalt and dirt paths, and up near the main entrance where you have that stone wall, there's a small sidewalk in there that's usually covered with tons of debris that's unusable. So we're trying to get some of those issues straightened out so that it's much more walkable from Grad Village all the way up the hill to Upper College Road.
My only editorial is that it's an embarrassment to the state of Rhode Island to have our flagship university flanked by such a horrible transportation network. It's really horrible. For everybody to go by, if you go to a state university in other states, it's like, it's a shining example of and symbol of your state. It's really embarrassing. Anyway, any other future agenda items? Thank you for proposing these two additions for next month. And with that, I think we can look for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Any seconds?
I'll second.
Sharon first, Rich seconds. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries.